we will call to order the meeting of the Green Bay Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission for Monday, May 21st, 2018. Go to, we got a roll call.
Roll call.
Do we need that now?
So everyone has signed
Everybody's
in, I
in?
believe, including Brad now. So
Okay.
I'm just going to go and add a motion here for, I guess, for roll call.
You know what?
It's an item, so
All right,
you have to excuse us. We have new system.
so we need a
Someone wants to.
Move approval of
motion
agenda.
been made and second it. All in favor? Motion
Aye.
carries. Go on to B, approval of the agenda. Nobody is mentioning about taking anything out of order, so I guess we will go with the agenda as laid out. Right.
Okay.
So,
I
I hear a
think I heard
motion.
earlier too, Dan was going to get ahead, I think, for approval of the agenda then.
Yeah,
Approval of the
approval of
agenda?
agenda, yes.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of the minutes from the previous month, I assume, Dave?
Correct.
Do I hear a motion to approve the
So
minutes?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. D, regular business. Move on to the annual election of the chair and vice chair. I will entertain a motion to keep the chair and the vice chair unless somebody would like to discuss on the commission for making a change.
The only thing I'll add, and I'm speaking on behalf of Chuck, because he had
Okay.
emailed me and he had said that he was fine with the way it is, and if someone had made a motion to elect him, that he was going to say no. But, so anyway, he's fine with leaving it the way it is.
You should never not make this meeting, whatever. So,
Right.
We love you, Chuck, and we need you, so we'll
So we're gonna keep
take
it
it as
as.
on record there, unless
Well,
you
it
gotta be
should
good for another.
be a motion probably.
There
Yeah,
needs to be a
well, I was
motion.
just, anybody.
I'll
got
serve
any-
unless somebody else.
Yeah, if there's anybody who wants to talk about changing, now's your time,
The
or
pay's good.
hold your peace for another year.
So Dan, motion, and second.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and second, all in favor
Aye.
of the election of the chair and vice chair? Okay, motion made and second, Dave, so we'll move on. 2, initial request, consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Dorf to consider doing a study to lower the speed limit on Church Road between Nicolay Drive and Bay Settlement Road.
Let me, for some reason this is taking it out of Orchard. Okay. It's set current now. Okay. Give me a second here, I'm going to put up on the display a map of the current location. So Church Road is a town road that is on the city's northeast side, very close to the border. As a matter of fact, up at Bay Settlement Road, the intersection, actually, that's where the corporate city limit would be. So the request limits would be from Nicolay Drive over to Bay Settlement, so you can see the segments on your screen. When it comes to lowering speed limits or changing them really up or down, state law does require that an engineering study be conducted prior to any sort of motion on that. So there couldn't be any change tonight because there's no study that would support that. My experience tells me that lowering speed limits or adjusting speed limits doesn't necessarily change motorist behavior. There needs to be a lot of different factors involved in order to change behavior. Because most people drive what they feel is a comfortable speed, and a majority of motorists actually do drive what they feel is a safe speed. That's what we call the 85th percentile speed. It's that extra 15%, roughly. You know, it's going to depend obviously on each road, but in general, that's what it is. That will typically speed over that number. So
There's a big hill there.
Correct. There is, Bay Settlement, this is up by Holy Cross
Yeah.
Church. And once you go westbound, you'll see, there's a decline there. There's a grade difference. That's a nice view, you can see the bay, but then it's a down slope, so
Now, where does the town of Scott come in there?
right at the intersection at Bay Settlement. Once you cross, this is an all-way stop where it says Bay
Right.
Settlement, and then out to 54, 57.
So east of Bay Settlement?
Yeah, this is, east of Bay Settlement, this is all Scott.
Okay.
In this segment, just to put it in context, well, the road itself, Church Road in this segment is posted 40 miles an hour. Now, east of, or in the town of Scott segment we were just talking about, it's actually 45. So you got 45, and then once you get past the stop, go towards the bay, then it drops 5 miles an hour. So at this point in time, we really can't do anything other than either A, deny the request, or B, refer it to staff for study.
Is there a question?
Yes, do we have interested parties to talk?
Well,
Okay, 1 second. You're here to talk on this agenda?
She's
Okay.
an
yes,
older.
Okay, oh,
I haven't traveled that road in quite a while, but I used to attend Bay Settlement Church, and I do know the area. I'm in the next district, though. This is Alderman Dorf's district, but I do know the area, and if you look at, too, I think people probably do go pretty fast down there, because if you look to the north, it's kind of looks like it's farmland, or it's open, and people think it's country, and people like to go a little faster in country. They don't recognize it maybe as a city street. So I think I would definitely support going to a traffic study and see how, the traffic is flowing. And because you got all that residential now coming out, which didn't used to be there, 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And I think that's why maybe the request is kind of to slow people down a little bit. And I do know that people you post the speed, because people are gonna go 5, 10 over. So you can bring it down, because then you got people, you think that's the speed that would be the normal, but if you put it there, then they're gonna go 5, 10 over that. So now you got people going maybe too fast for the area. So the things that I just would think that should be checked into. So I would definitely, to me, I would support it if it came to the council, if all the study says yes. Okay.
okay, thank you.
Just a couple comments. There is, I think, some sort of a common knowledge among society, I think, that people say if it's posted a certain speed, you're going to automatically go 5 over. That's actually, we have no evidence to support that. We've got a lot of areas where it's posted and people are actually driving at that speed limit lower. So it really is based off the road. The roadway design, she's correct in that it's kind of a country road. Actually, it's a shoulder ditch road. So most of our streets in the city have curb and gutter, for drainage, storm sewer, etc. This is built with a shoulder ditch section, so you have really one lane in each direction, a paved shoulder, then a 4-slope back slope, and water flows in the ditches. And as you can see from here, this is mainly abutted by farmland. There is, or has been, some development on the south side of the road, predominantly between Sussex and Durham roads. That's these two intersections. So there have been some homes, similar to what you have here. I think they're spaced out a little bit more, and there's some other lots too. It's subdivided. So there's some lots for sale, but really everything is, any of the development has been on the south side of the roadway. The other thing to consider, and I think Dan, you had mentioned about this, about that downgrade. If indeed, and we don't know what sort of recommendation could come out of a study, but let's just say that I know 30 has been brought up. There was a constituent of Alderman Dorf that had brought up that 30 miles an hour was what that person thought it should be. But a 15-mile-an-hour drop is a pretty big drop, and then you have the downgrade, so this might be something that could be difficult to enforce. So enforcement, I think, is definitely crucial to the effectiveness of it. So, I mean, without any enforcement, or I should say little to no enforcement, plus that downgrade, I think it would be probably hard to control speeds at 30. But then again, it's difficult to say up to this point until we actually have a study. The study would include, we would actually do a speed survey of determining what that 85th percentile speed is, what are the people really traveling this roadway. And then we look at a lot of different features and characteristics as well. This hill would be included as part of that study, because that is something that has a tendency to make people go a little bit faster. We'd look at safety history, see if there's any crashes in this location. I did a cursory look into the database on that, and I couldn't find anything. So it's a relatively safe road, at least from what the stats are telling us. And then I also run what's called US Limits. It's a software program that really is engineering based. So we look at a lot of the characteristics, features of the roads, and again, we bring in all that the crash history compared to what similar roads and how they're the safety numbers of them. So yeah, at this point, like I said, from the get-go, it's real early to say anything other than you'd either have to deny it or refer it to staff for study.
Mr. Chairman,
Entertain a motion?
I would move that item number 2 be referred to staff for study. I second that.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 3, initial request, consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman LaFaver to establish a no parking zone on the south side of East Shore Drive on the Wildlife Sanctuary entrance east to the no parking bike lane.
I will bring this up on the map here in a short second.
Do you want to run some of these together, Dave? I mean, 3 and 4 are
3 and 4 are very
similar?
Yeah, they're similar, but they are different streets.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So this one is, in particular, all right. It's hard to see because of the tree cover here, but this is actually a driveway right here. This is the main entrance to the wildlife sanctuary. And just east of that driveway is this crosswalk, and this crosswalk is the sidewalk that leads over to Bay Beach Park. So the initial request is to, from roughly where the push pin is, out to, and you can kind of see where the roadway here changes a little bit. It's a little wider in this area, and then here it narrows down, and when it narrows down, it goes into a bike lane. There's bike lanes on both sides. As a matter of fact, as the request states, the request area would be out to where that first no parking bike lane sign would be, which is about at the beginning of it. So roughly in this area where I'm pointing. I guess the one thing to really pay attention to that I noticed just from looking at it on a map and also when I did my field review was that this is a curve. So if you're exiting that driveway and there are vehicles parked, and especially if they would be larger like an SUV or something similar, I could see the potential for it being a little bit difficult to see the westbound movement. Fortunately, again, a cursory review of crashes, but I didn't find anything relative to that. The only crash type of behavior that I saw was actually more in this area, was because this does get pretty popular. There are people that park here, they might go fishing, whatever. And there's usually parking type of crashes, someone backing in or pulling out and hitting somebody. But I didn't find any intersection-related crashes at this location, so at this point in time, I really don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I mean, if the Alder and other people, I think that she reports to think it's a good idea. I don't see any issue with it, but the bottom line I always think about anytime you're restricting a parking zone is that you're basically pushing those people to another area.
Is this basically parking for the wildlife sanctuary?
I believe so, and perhaps Alder, maybe you.
Go ahead and
this is
speak
the perfect
to it,
time.
please.
And the name's pronounced LaFave.
Okay, thank you for
I know it's a
correcting me.
hard name, yeah.
I'll get it.
Doesn't
Thank you.
follow the normal rules. Anyway, I brought this up because I live across Kitty Corner. And I can see, I'm 1731. You probably can hardly see mine because I have a lot of trees. Yep, I'm the one with all the trees on the lot.
This one right here?
But yeah, I'm in the kitchen doing my dishes, and I can look right across and see the wildlife sanctuary entrance. And the problems that I've been seeing is when they have a special event, people are parking there. And they're not only parking on that curve part, and it starts to narrow and it's a curve, they are parking right at the entrance. When you come to the sidewalk, there's another paved sidewalk right next to the entrance sign, the big overhead. They're parking right there. So when people come out of, see right, yep, see that little blacktop? You can see it right there coming in. They park right in front of that. So when people came out, they had to pull almost into the intersection to see cars coming this way. Okay, and then they're parking, you can see how much it curves, you can't see. See that right there, people coming? It's curved so much. They actually, I think it was 3 Sundays ago, or Sundays. It was first really, really nice day, and people were parking at Bay Beach and walking, and people were starting to park right in there. And even though it was a nice day, no snow, they got out of their cars and were walking in the driving lane with their kids, walking on that side. They park there in the winter, they have their fun thing, they walk, and then it's dark, and they're walking in the driving lane, actually in the street. And that's, I see that and I thought, oh my God, all it takes, and I'll tell you an incident, it was 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. I was leaving mine, I'm on the cul-de-sac coming out, going east. They were parked there, it was dark, it's 25, and I was maybe going 20, starting, build up my speed a little bit. There was a car, I could see her trunk was up, she was standing there, and I go by, scared the zebras out of me. There was a kid standing right here. All he had to do was step out a couple steps and I would hit him. To me, I find that very unsafe for anybody parking in there. They can park at Bay Beach. They can park going west of the entrance. They park there, there's room. And they can park in the wildlife sanctuary. And I guess eventually the city's going to put more parking for Bay Beach. But there's room for people to park. They can even come down on my street. I park in front of our mailboxes on regular days. But there's parking there. And last time I talked to Mike for their family thing, what they did is that they had the police department to put no parking on both sides.
Temporary.
There, right. And they bust them. They had to park at Bay Beach and bust them in. Because he agreed that was unsafe. And Mike, I talked to him again. He said, yes, bring it forward. He agrees that it's very unsafe there. That's all I'm concerned about, is safety. I got like 2 or 3 other requests. You want me to stand here?
No, you can sit down, we'll
We'll
look
take
at
one.
each one at a
Okay.
time, but it looks like there's more than one problem there, there's no sidewalk. You're gonna push people further down, they're gonna be walking in the street too. That's the
No, there's
first thing
no
I
parking
see.
east of there anyway. Down further, there's no parking because it's bike path.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so
But
this
here I
one-
want no
yeah.
parking anytime.
So,
signs,
I don't know
so
if you saw, there was, just on the other side of this, there's a 25-mile-an-hour sign right here. This one. There's no parking here at the corner, so if the request was granted tonight, this effectively would create, it's kind of like a too long, no parking here at the corners is really what it is. So there'd be no parking on this side or the other side. It certainly frees it up for, I think, exiting motorists. It does make it a little bit safer. But as you would recognize, Matt, that another item was brought up, which is lack of sidewalk. This is city property, so something like that, if it would go in, it would actually be at the cost of the city to put that sidewalk in.
The INS.
Yeah, INS would have to order that and then go to council for that. Not necessarily a bad idea, but it looks to me like this is more of a, I don't know, I thought I saw a roll top curb, which is more of a flatter curb. Sometimes that's used in areas where if people do park, they kind of park on the grass and on the street a little bit to get them out of there. I don't know, do you see that at all, Alder?
No, I haven't
at all,
seen
or
it
not?
parked on the grass, so they
Oh.
see it, yes. And then
Okay.
in the winter, when it's plowed, there's a bank there. So.
Right. So, yeah, no, definitely, I mean, without the sidewalk, I think that certainly is a contributory factor for them walking in the street, no doubt.
So how far down to the east?
I'll show you where that
Think
sign
about going,
is.
Dave, if you're gonna do
It's a
something like
little
this.
ways.
Yep, it's up, actually, yeah, and here's where I was showing you initially on the map. This
Oh,
is, you
okay.
can see where it goes from concrete to asphalt.
Okay,
And then, actually, when this was shot, this imagery here, the signs were not in, though. That was something that I put in last year. I worked with former alder of the district, Joe Moore, and we wanted to clarify the bike lane in this area, so we had some additional markings, and we put the no parking bike lane signs, but it's roughly around in this area, so
Okay.
the intention would be to stop it right here.
Right there. What's the distance then from the driveway there?
I didn't measure it.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's hundreds of feet.
Hundreds, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, so
Or-
you're looking at easily displacing, probably 10 vehicles at
10
minimum,
vehicles.
I would think. And again, like I had said, I'm just trying to present all sides to it that, if it is restricted, they're just gonna, demand stays the same, you're just gonna find somewhere else to park.
Yeah, well,
So-
in that Bay Beach parking lot, a lot of the weekends, you go there,
That's
it's
where they have
full.
to
I
go,
mean,
that's where they have to go, yeah.
and that's full, so where are you gonna go? That's, I don't know,
They
maybe
go
we're
on
gonna
the
park
street.
on your street there.
I think
They
what it
do.
is
They
it's
do.
I think it's a convenient
do.
location for both, when you have a family that wants to go to both
Sure.
Wildlife and to Bay Beach, the sidewalk there obviously is a convenient way to enter the park. It's just kind of a nice, I think it's a convenient location.
For the winter thing, apparently there was no problem because they had no parking there, they had temporary, and then they had busing from Bay Beach. It worked real smoothly, people were fine with it, I guess, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I would make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Second. I didn't catch
I think,
Uh,
Craig?
Craig.
Thanks.
Alder Stevens.
So motion been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4, initial request, consideration of possible action, request for Alderman LaFay to install a speed bump across both lanes of East Shore Drive in front of Wildlife Sanctuary entrance and the sidewalk from Bay Beach Amusement Park.
As many of you recall, maybe not everybody, the city adopted about, I think it was 2009, 2010, a neighborhood traffic calming policy. And that policy addresses such features such as speed humps. We don't really have a lot of them in the city. One example would be Farland Avenue. That's one that's got some speed bumps on them. Speed bumps are a little bit different than I think what some people think of them from past years. And you think of, I always remember when I was a kid going through, was it Green Bay Plaza? I think it's Chris's district. But they had these huge speed bumps. And in Walmart today, there's these big speed bumps. And that's really not what we're talking about here. Speed bumps on a roadway, they're much smoother, much flat. They're actually designed so that it feels uncomfortable for a motorist driving over the speed limit. So if you're under the speed limit or at the speed limit, you'll feel it, but it's not going to be something that's going to wreck the bottom of your car or something. But getting back to this policy that council adopted in 2009-2010, speed bumps and other traffic calming devices are only to be used on residential streets. So looking at East Shore Drive is actually a minor arterial roadway, so it's meant to carry lots of traffic. A lot of the reason that that's in place actually is for emergency vehicle purposes, fire and PD. They're coming through on a call, it's a major roadway, and they may be speeding through there, and it obviously is not safe for their vehicles and equipment to be traversing over them. There's other reasons as well, but I know that's a big one. But bottom line is that on a street like this, it wouldn't qualify.
Yes. Dave, you have anything else, or?
Nope.
No, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the Neighborhood Association and the Wildlife Sanctuary are looking at to slow people down. It's 25 through there. Nobody does 25, nobody. They're doing 35, 40 at times through there. When I come out of the cul-de-sac and I'm going that way, I can see somebody speeding. And it's not marked as 2 lanes on each side. It's wide enough for, well, I guess with some parking on this side or whatever. Or you can go around somebody turning in or going slow. I had this lady come behind me. She was going real fast, so sorry, I straddled my lane, both, the whole area. I straddled it in the middle to slow her down. She passed me in front of the Wildlife Sanctuary entrance, double yellow line. She went down and she blew through the 4-way stop. We have people speeding through there all the time. We got people coming across the sidewalk, kids trying to cross, people turning in. You got people back there fishing, you got so much activity right in that area. We thought the table, they call it, it would be a longer one, and both lanes to slow people down, because I'm surprised somebody hasn't been there yet. But and we thought because the bus goes through there, it's not, difficult for the bus to go through it. There's a school bus and there's a city bus, because it's a longer bump. It's not like you think of the big thing, And it would be better. And I know I talked to Mike again at the Wildlife Sanctuary, and he's definitely for it, because they know people are speeding through there. It's a safety issue again, and Arterial Road, yeah, but it's through residential, and it's through a park area, which it should be 25 all the way down too, because that's the only, when you get past the sanctuary, the entrance and down a little ways, we got it down from 45 to 35. It's the only city street in the city that is 35. Residential is 25 to 30. Should be. So you got people coming the other way and they don't slow down at all. They come off of Webster, which is 35, they're going 40, 45. Zipping through. Some are doing 50 through there. And not kidding you. It's
Sure, you're right. Sounds like it needs some enforcement.
something needs to be done.
Most people who are speeding in that street a lot of people live in that
I
neighborhood.
know,
so-
and I don't care, get them. I mean, they should be fine. And it's unfortunate today, the only way people learn is through their pocketbook.
Yeah,
I mean, catch them and really
That's
find
true.
them. And, because otherwise it's not gonna
yeah.
improve.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it was an idea of some way to get the people to slow down in that area. I don't know what else we can do.
No, there's a lot of city streets that have the same issues. They
Oh, I
should
know,
say they're
I know.
Enforcement, Lieutenant Stroof can, probably attest to that. I don't know, maybe you can have some more enforcement out there in that.
Yeah, we can certainly add it to the request, and the traffic unit's been very good about being responsive to the request. Alderman Nicholson's not here, but he actually called me this week to thank the traffic enforcement unit for what it's been doing in his district. So we're certainly do our best. The truth of the matter is I have 2 traffic officers.
And I know.
I wish we only had 2 requests a week. They actually have a dry board in their office that is full, and it keeps getting fuller and fuller. But certainly and especially if there's an event taking place or there's something that you know about, you're always welcome to call my number and give me a heads up.
Well, now that Bay Beach is open, you're gonna have a lot of people
Absolutely.
walking back and forth.
We have the ability to put up
And that's-
speed signs on occasion. We don't like to leave them up for too long. People, they sort of lose their effectiveness after a short period of time, so we just try to put them in spotty places around the city. But we certainly can spend some time there on enforcement. Like I said, you're always welcome to call me. We can talk about
Maybe.
specific events as well.
And the same thing, if you're there more often, then you kind of get used to it, so slow down until you're gone. So make it kind of a little sporadic
Yeah,
of
it's
a sudden,
unfortunately very much
and
the
then
reality
catch
of
'em.
enforcement. But we have certainly a number of different ways. We have different types of enforcement that we do. We combine some of the enforcement with
Okay.
education. We're not out there necessarily writing all speeding tickets. We'll write as many, if not even more, warnings, just to let the neighbors see the fact that we're there. That kind of puts them at ease, and then it sort of spreads by word of mouth that, hey, the cops are sitting on East Shore Drive and they're really watching it.
Someone made a suggestion that you should sit on a busy street where people speed or whatever and point your bow dryer. I think you're undercover.
I've considered that.
There you go. Sit in your
Maybe
cul-de-sac
I'll do
there.
that. Sit there.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
the problem with this request is it does not follow local ordinance, and I would think that it would take a change in ordinance regarding the calming procedures in order for this project to qualify. So I would make a motion to receive and place on file this particular request.
Okay, motion been made. Is there a second? Motion been second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 5, initial request, consideration with possible action on the request from Alderman Fabe to establish a no parking except by residential permit zone on the north side of East Shore Drive.
Okay, I know that the Alder and I have had a discussion on this one already, and I know that she's had discussions also with other members of council relative to our residential permit parking program. And as a more of a refresher reminder, and I know that we had just addressed this over by the hospitals, it's really just to remedy area-wide long-term parking issues, not fragmented in street segments. So this is more long-term, there's demand every day on the street, there's just no places for people to park. Larger area, the hospital, again, perfect example of why one went in. So one particular street, to have that zone is a pretty difficult thing to enforce, and it really doesn't go with why we established the type of ordinance in the first place. However, there was discussion between us relative to what the issues really were. And the primary issue that I had, and Kathy can confirm this, was that mailboxes were getting parked in, and it just may be difficult to get in and out of the driveway. So one of the things that I had offered was that if there are particular residences along that street that would like to have their curbs painted yellow, this is a technique that we use in the Lambeau Field area, and it's done based off of request only, because there's people that actually don't want that too. They don't want to have a yellow curb in front of their house. They don't like the look of it or whatever. But if someone wants it, that's something that's, it is available in areas that we know that there could be some parking issues. And I think that just based off the location of East Shore Circle, I mean, it makes sense that there's probably some particular parking issues at certain times of the week. So, I mean, it seemed like an issue that could get resolved by that action. So, and I don't know if Kathy, you have anything to add?
Care to speak to that?
Yeah,
item?
I'm speaking with Dave there, yeah. I was glad we had the discussion, and I didn't get a chance to talk to all the neighbors. One house I think might be selling, it was empty for a long time, so I have to wait till they come. It's not an issue that has to be done right away or anything, but I will get that back to you. I talked to one neighbor, says, oh yeah, he would definitely want it, I want it, and it would help clear up our mailboxes. Because before we had the mail person, we knew her, and she was there a long time, and if people parked there, she'd actually come up our driveway
Yeah,
and
which
deliver our
would be
mail. But not anymore.
Unfortunately, now we're like that in the city.
They get nasty.
Yeah.
And you can't control people parking there. And I did, one person was parked, and I saw they came back from my house. I just walked down and I said, sorry, you parked in front of my mailbox, and my mail's gonna be coming pretty soon, It was terrible. He said, oh, you rich people. I thought, rich? I wouldn't be living in this little house if I was rich.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah, but it's just, and I mean, when I go somewhere, I don't park in people's.
Yeah, you're a thoughtful
Other
one,
people
not
don't.
everybody's a
But
thoughtful issue,
we don't
unfortunately.
mind the parking there, it's for Bay Beach. I know they widened their road when they redid it, and it was for extra parking, I think, for Bay Beach. But it's okay, we don't mind it, as long as we can get in and out, and our mailboxes are clear. So I think if we do the 4 feet, one resident down further, Bill Dean is rental, I'm gonna tell them they're gonna have to move the mailboxes over, or they will be over too far.
Right.
But we'll work on that.
Yeah, we can work together on that.
Sure.
And that's something that we can take care of at staff level. I mean, it's already something that we
Want to refer
agreed
to
to.
staff
And
then?
it's kind of hard to make a motion because we don't have the exact locations at this point in time.
Refer to staff.
Just,
And you can refer to staff, that's fine, and then we can just handle it at that.
We have a motion to refer to staff.
sure, so, yeah, I'm glad we talked, and
Motion been made,
it helps.
refer to staff.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Motion carries. 6, initial request, consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman LaFave to discuss safety measures similar to the crossing by the hospital on Webster Avenue for students crossing University Avenue to the Boys and Girls Club.
I have this one as well, on map. Changing areas now. So just to give you a little bit of context, you can see the East River here. This roadway here is University Avenue. Zooming in a little bit, this building here with the circular roof line here, this is the Boys and Girls Club. And this is the intersection in particular, I believe under discussion. So Yeah, actually Brad and I took a drive and we looked at this one, and I actually have video of what it is as well, if you wanted to see that. But in essence, well, you can actually see from this map that we have. It's a T intersection. We have marked crosswalks all the way around. We have signs as well. So we've got pedestrian signs, down arrow at this location. And as you can see, there's a curve here that does create, I mean, we just had another item about a curve, so as I was saying before, it can somewhat create limited sight opportunities. And in this case, it would be in the westbound direction. What we had done actually at the time when we installed this was we installed an advanced pedestrian sign. So it's before the curve, so it's, and it actually has a supplemental plaque that says the word ahead on it. So as you're coming into that curve, you see that there's a warning for that. You can see that this actually is a cul-de-sac right here. So like I was mentioning before, Forest Street, this tees in. Obviously at one time, I believe this was a full four-leg intersection, but then they cul-de-sac this off, I believe, during the last reconstruction of University Avenue. But there's sidewalks on both sides, and I think what's happening is there's probably neighborhood kids coming over this way and then going to attend the Boys and Girls Club. Now, that said, and maybe we can have Kathy add something as well here, but if I recall from our conversations that some of the staff at Boys and Girls Club at times, if they're available, will come across and maybe get some of these kids, and assist with some of these crossings, look for gaps in traffic, that kind of thing. But like I said, signs are in place, markings are in place. Did a cursory review of the traffic database. I didn't find any crash history for the intersection itself at all, including beds. So at this point in time, maybe we should hear from other FFA.
I was looking, Eric Vannon, he's the one who made the request. Excuse me. He works for the Boys and Girls Club, but not there or the West Side. He's at their offices, which is someplace else. He made the request because kids try to cross, and then they have to try to have staff across the street at the Boys and Girls Club, try to get across and get those kids across. And it's time consuming for them, to always have the staff out there. And he was wondering if they could do something. Unfortunately, yeah, the signs are there. People today don't, I'm sorry. If they look right ahead of them, they don't look what's on their side sometimes. We've had people walking off, stepping off where they're supposed to stop, and then they want to turn, stepping off on the sidewalk and getting hit. So people don't look to the sides. They don't watch a lot of that stuff. It is marked, which is good, but we're looking for something. I know it's a little more elaborate by the hospitals, but there's actually flashers. You push it, and the sign right there says you have to stop. Something to help facilitate that. It doesn't have to be all the time. It's more when the kids are out of school. Well, the summer would be a little bit more, but after school they come in, and just something that you could do for safety for them.
You think they'd still go and help them across the street? With more safety?
I don't know. See, I wish Eric was here. I told him about it, but he didn't show up. That he could speak a little bit more on that, but.
Sorry about the hand. I've been having problems with we have a GoPro, that's how we record these videos. And I couldn't see it because of the light
You can't
on the
see, you got
sky.
your hand
No, I
up,
couldn't see
it's
if it
like,
was
oh, look at
working, so I had
that
to put it in front to give some contrast.
Yeah, but I do travel there, and people do speed through there, and it's a curve again, and it's just, it's another safety thing, just to look at some solution. There it is again.
Sorry. No one knows what my hand looks like now.
But, some solution that would help, just make it a little safer. I don't know if you can come up with some idea
Dave,
that would
any
help.
ideas?
I don't,
Well, I
whatever.
guess the one thing I want to do is address the actual request itself. One thing that hasn't been discussed about was about safety measures similar to the crossing by the hospital on Webster Avenue. So what we have over at Webster Avenue, I'm sure those that were paying attention or have driven South Webster Avenue in the hospital corridor since last year when we reconstructed it. There are actually 2 mid-block crossings that incorporate what we call rectangular rapid flash beacons. Now, those are in place at that location. We worked with the hospitals closely, obviously, with the design, so there was some relocation. We made the hospitals work with us to make sure that everything was lining up properly, because initially things weren't lining up all that well. So they have, for example, St. Vincent has a valet lot across the street, and that's where a lot of people are crossing, valet drivers. Sometimes people will park in there and they'll cross as well. Now, those are button activated, and the rapid lights, they kind of, they look like emergency vehicle lights. They just have more of a rapid flashing, what you see with a standard beacon that's roughly like 1 flash per second. But the device itself is not a standard device. It actually was pulled from use for a short time due to it wasn't safety issues, it was patent issues, but got reinstated for use. It's actually not even a standard traffic control device. It's under interim approval by Federal Highways, but nonetheless, it's effective. Since it's not an approved device, what we did is we searched out communities that have used a lot of these types of devices to come up with some criteria, and we have found that the city of Boulder, Colorado actually has a pretty decent policy. In general, it's on just uncontrolled crosswalks, but they also include the RRFB as one of the potential devices. And every request that we've been getting, we've been running through the criteria that they use, which seems to be pretty standard. The one thing that you'll notice is that you really kind of need a combination of both ped traffic and vehicular traffic in order to satisfy those conditions. Now, the hospitals, compared to something like this, I think the biggest difference you're going to find is that you have a lot more crossings at the hospital. When I recently had a meeting with some of their staff, and they were very happy with the devices, but they also had said on how many crossings that they actually have. I think his math was off by a factor of 10 or 100, but he had said it was like 1 million crossings a year in the county. That much.
I don't think so.
But no, I mean, you'd have to. I mean, but if you do the math, like it's 100,000 crossings a year, you're looking at like 275 crossings a day, which I think is still probably on the high side. But I wouldn't doubt it if they have 100 people crossing in a day. It's a lot. It's a pretty busy area. As a matter of fact, again, on our drive today, when we were coming southbound prior to Mason Street, we saw the lights flashing on the southernmost crossing. So they do get used. You may ask, well, can't you just use them anywhere? What happens is if you use them in locations that light never really comes on, in other words, a location that doesn't have a lot of ped traffic, sometimes it surprises the motorists, as in like, I never saw this before, and then they just don't know what to do, and therefore the effectiveness and the compliance rates go down. So last thing we want to do is make a recommendation for any sort of false sense of security. That's always been our bottom line is, we're all in the same camp. We want safety. We just want to put the right appurtenances in the right spot. So something like this too, as well, is a pretty costly feature. I know no one wants to put price on safety. It's a different discussion. But the ones that we put in over there were about $7,600 per installation. That did not include any of the underground base work that we had to do as part of the project. That's that's additional. So
Yeah.
I would say you're looking at probably about 10,000 a crossing.
I mentioned those because I've gone through them and I like them. I think they're really, and for me, I saw, when I went through, it was one person. I came back, it was 2 people. Right, it's not,
It's frequent.
sure, it depends on maybe hours, times. But I thought it was kind of a neat idea, but that's just an idea to, for you to get an idea, something. It doesn't have to be that. Is there something else that could be done that would effectively make the motors aware that, people are gonna cross there or something? I'm just asking, for something that maybe they could study and see what would be another option that would be really, maybe something flashing or something just to draw their attention.
Right. Well, I guess the one thing, and I'm going to remind everyone here today that engineering measures aren't going to solve everything. It's always going to be a combination of everything. It's going to be the education, enforcement, and engineering. You have them all combined. That's usually when we see the success stories. So engineers are not gonna be able to solve this problem alone. I mean, I've heard multiple times that you're like, well, we put the signs out there and they're not doing anything. Well, we could put flashes out there, they're not gonna do anything. It's, where do we end? You know, we can't throw the whole kitchen sink at this right away. What I can recommend at this point in time, and this is something that we've been more or less doing to keep pedestrian crossings a little bit different from any of the other warning things. So as you saw in the videos, it's the standard diamond-shaped pedestrian sign. They get the pedestrian and it's a diamond shape. That diamond shape is a pretty common sign. I mean, we use it for a lot of different things, merging, lane ends, all sorts of things. But what we do here now at the city is whenever we're looking at locations that we could see that there could be potential issues, and with the curve being there, I mean, that certainly is something that, obviously we tried to address here earlier. But the one thing that we do is we apply what we call a fluorescent yellow-green background to the signs rather than just a standard yellow. Signing, sheeting has come a long way in the last 10, 15 years, and we've standardized now on what we call diamond grade sheeting, which is ultra-reflective, retroreflective type of sheeting. But in a case like this, upgrading those signs to, say, that fluorescent yellow, I think would be something in line. So.
Why don't we refer it to staff and you can take a look at it?
Sure.
Fair enough.
Sure. And maybe too, I'm surprised Eric's not here, but because I don't go through there all the time, I don't see when the kids are coming,
Probably a certain time of day when school's out this time of year.
I didn't have time to stop and ask the staff there what they think.
Davison, we try to do baby steps, ramp one up. Maybe that'll work. If it doesn't,
If it doesn't, then.
take a little look,
Right.
step up, because it does get costly,
That's all,
what you're asking.
yeah.
So.
I just brought up the hospital ones because I thought that was really
Yeah,
a
no,
good
that's-
solution to the problem. And of course, cost, we always gotta look at that too.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's a lot of spots in the city where that could be useful too, so I mean, you gotta look at the whole gambit there, so.
Okay.
But, you have our motion to refer to staff? Motion been made by second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 7, initial request, consideration with possible action on request by Alderman Weary to propose remedies to speeding on 9th Street, especially between Oneida Street and Military Avenue.
Is this family night?
I think so. My mother-in-law's not talking?
You should hear him. He's lucky he's still here.
Now, items 7 and 8 are somewhat similar in nature. I'm believing that the reason behind the requests are probably very similar. So, at least on the map, I'm going to kind of show you both areas right here. I'm going to zoom out first because the request itself is actually for, let me just double check. Okay, that is Jackson right there. 9th Street is this east-west street through the push pin here. Now, Military Avenue is the one with the curve. So we're looking, this would be the west end. And Oneida Street, I believe, is this one. Is it not? Yeah. Yeah, because this is West Side Shop over here, so, yeah. Oneida has a lot of trees. You'd think with it being arterial, it'd pop out a little bit more, but it does have quite the tree canopy. But anyway, this would be the eastern limit of the request. So the area itself, it is posted 25 miles an hour. It's varies in width. It's a concrete street. It is an arterial street. Relative to engineering applications for remedies of speeding, I think we're going to be a little bit limited on what we can do. To be quite frank, the only way to really physically limit is to reconstruct a roadway like this. I mean, people, as we had said before, people drive what they feel comfortable. Most people safely do that. It's that 15% that we always have to watch out for. In a situation like this, you have a street that's one lane in each direction. You have parking lanes on both sides of the street. And I think that that's probably something that the neighborhood would want to preserve. The only way that you could probably physically slow down speeds through engineering would be to narrow the roadway. And that would include losing parking, and I don't think that would probably be something that'd be too favorable to the neighborhood. But, you know, the elder can address that if he'd like. But bottom line is that it is an arterial. It just happens to be that at least in probably the eastern third of the request, you've got residences on both sides. You got some residences on the western end here, and then you also have a park. You do have a school, Jackson Elementary School, which, you know, that's been on the agenda here before with some of the parking and loading issues that we've resolved out there. But bottom line is that we're a 25-mile-an-hour roadway. The street section is what it is. Is this something that we could retrofit with bike lanes? That was one of the things that I thought, because I know that we've had some success on some streets on the far west side relative to bringing some speeds down with kind of a double bonus where you're accommodating also another more traffic bikes. But unfortunately, we've got too narrow of a street in this situation. It came close, actually, in the western portion, but then it narrows down. So we couldn't retrofit it with bike lanes while preserving parking. We could retrofit it with bike lanes to get rid of the parking, but that's usually not a real popular item to bring forward. But you never know. I mean, I'm open to that option if indeed you know, we could get some support behind it. But and then we also would have some issues too, I think, with the pavement condition, because it is an older concrete section, and you know, that joint line would probably be right where you put a bike lane anyway. So that's really something that you want to avoid, is that if you got some joint issues, you know, from the frost heave and things over the years, that could actually produce a hazard within that bike lane. But I guess when it comes down to traffic calm measures, I'm just going to reiterate what we had talked about Church Road. I did mention this is an arterial roadway, so again, something like speed bumps or something like that, it just wouldn't qualify for it. And that is a policy that was adopted by council about 10 years ago. Other than that, I mean, to me, I'd like to see what the speeds are, number one. If indeed this is an issue that's happening all the time. I'm sure that, and perhaps maybe the elder can expand on this, because I'm sure he's maybe had a little bit more contact with some of the residents, but there has been some nighttime crashes that have occurred in this corridor. Namely, there's been errant vehicles that have actually left the roadway and hit houses. I believe it happened twice on the south side of the road. But these are kind of, and I'm not downplaying, I mean, they're horrible events, but they're kind of anomalies where I think, they happen in the middle of the night and you got people going, 90 to 100 miles an hour. That's a difficult thing to control. I mean, it's one of those things I think everyone sits around and goes, well, what do we do? How do you change that kind of driver behavior? They're definitely in that 15%. They're within the 1% or whatever, it's a very difficult thing to accomplish. Through engineering, I don't really know how we would do that. Perhaps through enforcement, education, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's really about all I have on the item.
Alder, can you speak there?
Sure. Hello, Traffic Commission. How are you? Long time since teen nights.
I know, it's been a
We used to
long
work
time.
teen nights together. Those were fun.
Good old days.
Yeah, this issue, as Dave mentioned a couple years ago, a house on 9th Street, I got hit by a car. And it was, a fair amount of damage, but they fixed it up and the same family's there. You could probably just about pinpoint it, I think.
Right
Yeah.
out in this area.
Yep. People like to travel down 9th Street heading east and get airborne, because it's goes downhill, and they like to, so neighbors witness people.
It's Ridge
racing.
Road, so literally, no, he's right, there's a little bit of a
Ridge
grade
is-
change if you're going eastbound.
That ridge, yeah.
So what happened, I don't know, a couple months ago, is someone got airborne and they hit that same house again and totaled it. In fact, the Jablonskis live there and they have to live with their parents right now in Swamico because they totaled it. It was, they were home at the time and they missed a couple other houses and hit the same house again and knocked it off its foundation. So they have to rip it down, unfortunately. So the neighbors then brought to light, hey, this is an ongoing thing, people trying to get airborne, and these kids or whoever they were got airborne and lost control. And so they wanted me to bring it forward and see what we can do. I know speeding's an issue everywhere. I mean, we have a lot probably speeding anywhere in the city. That's no reason not to try and do something, but there's no rush on this. You know, if we can work together, refer it, look at a speed study. You know, I'm just gonna give you the things they requested. I know some of these are not possible due to size and expense. Obviously, they asked about a roundabout. They asked about speed bumps, four-way stop, curving the street, like you had mentioned, narrowing it and curving it, so you actually have to slow down.
Chicane.
Yeah, like in Deep Peter on Broadway.
Right.
They're just curious if those are possible. Is the expense too much? Is it, you know, is there any other options? So 7 and 8 really are intertwined together, the intersection and that strip on 9th. I think the residents are fine if this gets referred to staff to look at the speeds and see, is it bigger issue than we know, or is it that 15%? And what are some options we can do? Whether it's, you know, getting more traffic officers. 3 for the west side, 1 for the east side.
More power
That's
to you, I'd
fair.
love it.
They pay for themselves.
Yeah.
Well, you know, really,
I mean, they
with
would.
these crashes into the house, you know, we are doing that enforcement on the weekends with the OWI task force and the local alcohol enforcement, because I think that's really the crux of the responsibility there. I mean, certainly the speed is an issue, but I think what we're finding, at least those 2 accidents and then the fatality that we had a year and a half ago, all of them with either drugs or alcohol involved too.
Yeah. The other
So-
one, they were coming the other way on 9th Street
Right.
and hit the curb and got airborne, and their car split in half on a tree.
Correct.
During the day.
It was there.
That was like around Easter time.
It was on
Yeah, it
Easter.
was right on Easter morning.
That's right.
So, you know, there are, and I agree with Dave, I think these are anomalies. They're serious enough where we obviously should be discussing it, but the reality is this isn't your typical speeder, this isn't your typical 15%. This is an extreme situation, and I mean, what are the chances that house gets hit twice?
Yeah.
That's just,
So I don't know if.
buy a lottery ticket.
I don't know
Yeah.
if the draw is that, you know, the ridge, they like to get airborne, they fly and they see how far they can go before they come back down.
It's almost like there's 2 ridges there too. I drove that, and there's one just west of there. You know, kind of like almost by where the school property starts. There's a little dip right there, and then there's another dip right in the intersection, actually. Therefore, it's Ridge Road, and I always thought, you know, Ridge is always kind of that,
the
you know, there's a
ridge.
grade point there, yeah.
Fortunately.
Well, the good thing is, you know, and one thing that the Alder did mention was about finding out when this is happening. And the fortunate thing is with our surveying techniques, our speed surveying techniques, we leave the equipment out all the time, and we'll leave it out for a full week. It's always a good idea. That way you get somewhat of a picture of what's going on during your normal weekday, school, whatnot, and then also during these down periods on what's happening. That's easily something, I mean, we have that capability of doing that and bringing back some very reliable data.
Get it out in the next 2 weeks, you can capture the end of the school season.
I got you beat, they're already out there.
Oh, yeah. Dave's always on the ball.
No, it's just one of those things where, you know, we have our program, and then like, if I can slip something like this and get it in there for a week, you know, let's just get it done.
So I brought it forward just as the initial.
Place and refer to staff, is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
and that's fine. I think
8 and
everybody
9,
knows
or
it's
7 and 8?
Yeah.
7 and 8, okay.
That's-
All right.
We appreciate it.
Okay.
So,
Entertain a motion, refer to staff.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we refer 7 and 8 to staff. Second.
Motion made in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 9, initial request.
could you give me just 1 second? I got 2 items I gotta go through on this, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Okay, now we're on the next item, and,
9, consideration of possible action on request by Alderman Weary to implement a citywide study of all Green Bay public schools for crosswalk enhancements and crossing guard placement.
okay. Actually, my response is pretty simple. We've heard this request actually quite recently by Alderman Galvin. The result from Traffic Commission and from council was to create what's called a traffic safety task force. I've been in touch with Celestine, our chief of staff, and Alder Galvin relative to this, and that process is moving forward. Now, if you recall, the impetus of such a task force is not necessarily to conduct engineering studies or things like that, but it's more or less trying to come up with solutions on how we operate the city to change the driving culture. That's really the objective of this task force. Secondly, and this is probably a little bit more aligned, I think, with what the request is that we have now underway a Safe Routes for Non-Drivers study. That contract was approved, I think, in April. I was involved in the kickoff meeting for that to form the advisory committee and come up with some overall objectives that we want to see as part of this study. It's really kind of a two-part study. A lot of you have probably heard Safe Route to School. So this is a Safe Route to School plan that's incorporated in it, as well as a city bicycle and pedestrian plan. We're one of the last cities that actually in this area that does not have one. County's got one, some of our neighbors as well, but we saw the need and we wanted to say, let's expand the scope of this study to include the bike path plan for the city and to also have the safe routes. So as part of that process, crosswalk enhancements, crossing guards, that's all folded into the scope of that study. So something like this, we could either receive and place on file, you can just, I can literally just refer this item to them, but they would look at it and say, well, this is what we're doing anyway, so I don't really know what kind of response they would have other than we're already doing it. But that's really all I have to offer on it.
Alderman, did you wish to speak to this item? Or do you have somebody?
If you don't mind, yeah, there's a
Do
resolution.
you have anything, or do you have anything on? Okay, all right. 1 second, we'll get, need to suspend the rules, thank you. Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Interested parties to speak, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, so you come up to the microphone in a precise 3 or 4 minutes, if you could describe your name, or first your name and address, please.
Chris Calloway, 207 Cleveland Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54303.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, on March 2nd, my teenage son was hit while crossing on the corner of Shawano and Gray Street. In the crosswalk with the crossing walk. The lady ran a red light, hit him while he was crossing in that intersection, and proceeded to turn left, go down the street, come back, briefly ask him if he was all right. He said, I think so. Gone. And they weren't able to find the driver at all to find out. Luckily, he was only bruised, not seriously hurt, but he made a mad dive back to the sidewalk and still got hit in this instant. I understand, I had discussions with the gentleman over here and that over the phone, and, what they came back with is I couldn't even discuss this without getting my alderman involved, which I thought was kind of silly to move it forward. And two, that I've driven through, I've gone to union meetings in Appleton, different places. With my union business, I've seen a lot of different crosswalks and downtowns and stuff that do this. A lot of other cities that do this much better than we are right now, as far as major intersection crosswalks. By Gray and Shawano Avenue is one of the nearest crosswalks to the school. The other one's way down on 12th Avenue, and a lot of these kids are crossing in between that. And Officer Wright, we talked to her, the officer involved in the scene coming to it, and she thinks there's a great need to improve this in that area. Also by Franklin, she said that they've had a lot of problems where the city crosswalk is for the city employees too, that they have a lot of problems with traffic and trying to cross. So I think we could do a much better job. I've driven through Ashwaubenon, they got signs up with like a little kid crossing in the center. They have delineated the crosswalks, delineated a lot better than we're doing. And I think it's a big safety issue. Be a teenager or not, you can't defend yourself from a car. And he was just really shocked because he was doing what he's supposed to do. And I understand probably the glare of the sunlight because it was in the morning. The driver was facing east, right into the sun. So I'm sure it's partially that, but I just think we have to do a much better job of delineating our crosswalks so that they strike you, just West of that, if you go to the trail, we're across the Shawano Avenue, we have Center Island, we have a lot better signage for a trail. But these are a lot of kids every day. A lot more people cross that roadway in the middle between Oneida Street and Gray Street and 12th Street than probably that cross that trail. But we have a much better signage and much better crossing by the trail. And I just think that we could do things. I don't think they have to cost a fortune, but I think we could have a lot better signage and a lot better delineation that make them stand out. And our kids are valuable to us. I mean, they have enough problems when they get to school worrying about that, what's going on there. But they can't even get there safely. Oh. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Thank
I'm glad your son wasn't hurt any worse than he was. Good comments. Anybody else to speak to this, Alderman? Anybody else in the gallery that?
Well, and thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Hold on, we'll just go back to regular business. So, motion second, all in favor? Okay, we're back to regular business.
Thanks.
Yep.
When I had put this request in, I must have been just after Alderman Galvin put his in, so that they do dovetail, and they dovetailed that closely. But do we have a timeline on when that would come back? Is that
I'm
month,
not
6
sure,
months, a
Dave, you
year?
know?
For the actual safe routes plan, that's obviously more, I don't want to say more official, I mean, it's someone's contracted, so there's obviously a defined schedule. This plan is supposed to wrap up in mid-2019. They have a lot of data collection that they have to do, obviously, to sift through it, and come up, and there's a lot of meetings as well. So the timeline is looking at getting some of a final draft of this that's going to be ready for city review and ultimately council and improvement service committee by sometime in mid-2019.
So about a year.
Yeah, at least a year, but to be quite honest, that's a pretty fast track. I mean, a year sounds like a lot of time, but this is a big, big project. It's huge. But then the task force itself, that one, I haven't been alerted of the timeframe. This is kind of the mayor's office. This is their project, or they were delegated, I should say, by Common Council for the mayor's office to create this task force with Alderman Galvin. So, like I said, the initial phases have been started with it based off of the conversations that I've had with Celestine. But to be quite honest, a task force like that, I don't necessarily know if it has an end. This is something I think that probably needs to happen in order to create change in the driver's culture. That's really what the objective is, and I think it's a great objective.
And I can mention it to the mayor as well, but if you could mention it to Celestine, Mr. Galloway perhaps would be interested in serving on the board, volunteering as a citizen member, to offer just a parent and citizens input. I'm not sure how we're constructing the.
I would refer that to Celestine.
Yeah, if you could, and I will as well, but
Right.
it doesn't pay to have volunteers, right?
Yeah, no, he's got a mission there.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Just a comment, as you know, I'm chairman of the Green Bay Neighborhood Leadership Council, which is the umbrella organization for all of our neighborhood associations. Speeding is the #1 issue, by far. When we did a survey just recently, that came up as the #1 issue of concern to the presidents of the neighborhood association. So it's something that the city council really needs to address, probably in the budget session.
Agreed. So if we wanted to wrap this into the current task force, that's fine.
Okay.
And the safe groups, and see if we can get some more citizens involved, that would be big too. Hopefully get some things implemented sooner. I mean, the safe study thing will be done in a year, but the task force could get things done and implemented much quicker. We'll bring forward ideas.
Right, and I think, Dan, you kind of hit on, I think, where the objective of that group is how do we change that culture? Obviously, it's going to be money and resources to apply to enforcement of those laws and other things. That's a huge part of it, I think. So I think this next budget cycle is going to be pretty critical when it comes down to that. So, that's something that I did implore to Celestine, was that, I think that we got kind of a shorter time frame here, because budget cycle's coming up. I mean, our planning is starting in June, normally June, July. I mean, we're putting numbers together. So this is coming on pretty quickly. So I did emphasize that I think that we need to get on this pretty quickly.
traffic commission could send a recommendation for additional funding
Right.
for these programs, right? I mean, that would carry a lot of weight too. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So for item 9, should we receive and place that on file to coincide with what you already started, Dave, or how would you suggest?
It's your motion. I mean, like I said, I think the overall request itself is being addressed by
Right.
both. And, you know, relative to recommendations and so forth, that's something that can take place between the elder and myself.
Okay,
I move the place on file.
motion been made. Your second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 10, 90-day trial termination, establish a one-way yield condition on Raccoonberry Way at Indigo Bluff Drive.
If you recall, this is a newer subdivision. This was a T intersection, a very logical place for a yield condition, and there was a curve involved too as well, so we saw definitely the reason behind it. It's working well, so I make a recommendation to approve and adopt by ordinance.
So moved.
Motion been made, your second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. E, under informational.
1 second here. Okay, I'm ready.
Request by Alderman LaFave to clarify who's allowed to occupy a no parking zone.
In general, no parking zones are, nobody should be parking there, of course. That means, you know, get out of your car, take your keys out, go do your business and leave your car there. That's illegal. There are exceptions under state statute, and the city has also adopted state statute by ordinance. So the exceptions to the rule are loading of goods, loading or unloading of goods or people. So this is a primary reason that if you go by a school during its release time and you see parents sitting in their car, they're occupying their vehicle in a no parking zone before school day zone. That's the reason they're not getting a ticket, is that they can move at any time. If there's something that happens, an officer says, move along, they move along. And it's also been, I guess you'd say, part of getting it to work around our schools. But in general, loading, unloading of goods, you'll see that in certain areas where we've established loading zones, or let's just say there's someone moving, you know, or they're UPS drivers, FedEx drivers. They'll park in a parking lane, and it may say no parking. They'll throw their flashers on, they'll go do their delivery and come back. It's more of a, you know, something quick turnaround like that, and that they are actually, you know, within view of their vehicle, they can see their vehicle, and their stop would really just be very momentary. So, and to expand on that, I did have a conversation with the elder about this, and it was, and maybe she's got more to add, but it was more of a clarification of on East Shore Drive where you may recall it turns into that bike lane. So as you proceed towards DWGB, we've got, you know, quite a length of East Shore Drive that consists of a bike lane and a travel lane. And the sign, well, as you remember in the request, no parking bike lane. So the question was asked of me, is it legal for them, as in a FedEx driver, to park their vehicle in that location and go make a delivery across the street? Because as you know, it's all homes on the north side, and that's where all the driveways are, and there's nothing on the south side. That's all wildlife sanctuary. So the answer to that is, I don't know if there's really a real clear answer, because a loading and unloading and delivery of goods is actually taking place. That driver is in attendance of the vehicle, you know, they can usually see it. Now, those drivers are a little on the longer side,
That's a
you know,
long driveway.
so I get that. So you would think, well, why wouldn't that driver just pull into the driveway and do the delivery? So I thought about that, and I didn't make any phone calls, but I somewhat questioned on whether or not they may have policies. These companies may have policies, because some of these trucks are a little on the bigger side. If they say, if you can avoid being in a driveway, avoid being in a driveway, because it's probably a liability thing. They might, you know, someone might say, well, I didn't have that crack in my driveway, and well, then that vehicle's there. And that, again, I'm just thinking out loud on something that I thought is potential. I don't know if this policy exists, but it seems like it probably could, which is probably why you see a lot of these delivery drivers, they don't, I mean, I know when I've gotten deliveries at my house, they don't come in my driveway, they park on the street, and they make their delivery and they move along. Now, the fortunate part is that the occupancy is usually very short-lived. This case is a little unique because you're throwing a bike lane in there, and a bike lane is technically a travel lane, so are they obstructing a travel lane? Potentially, yeah. I think you kind of have to look at the context of it at the same time, though, as in if a bike does come up to it and there's someone parked there. And my understanding that there used to be a lot more parking activity until we put those signs up, which was really just last year, that these bicyclists will just do what they would do logically and just probably go into the motor or the travel lane, the vehicle lane, and then go back and diverge back into the bike lane. And bicyclists, as we know, can occupy legally the travel lane as well. So it'd be a lane deviation for them. Obviously, they gotta look behind them, see if everything's clear to move around. So I think it's somewhat of a gray area, to be quite frank. You know, I'm not an enforcement officer. You know, I don't know exactly what, you know, a parking officer or potentially a police officer would do in this situation. But I clearly see it that if, again, and I'm not a judge too, but if this came to court or something, I have no idea if a judge would throw a ticket like that out or not. And, you know, these laws are really only as good as they're enforced and as they are educated. So, so I think, does that kind of, I know it doesn't really directly answer, because I don't know if I really have a good answer for it, but I think, you know, at least I explained
There's
about
other
what you can do with
examples that I
that
can
parking.
give. The reason I brought this up, because I've been driving, when I drive around the city, I see different things. The FedEx thing, there's a bike lane there, and it says no parking bike lane. If a car parked there, and a police officer came along, even if they ran across, you know, in the house or something, you know, talking to people, this guy would have been, I don't know if he went in the house or not, the person was home or right there. There's a long driveway, can't even really see it. If I parked there and the policeman came along, he'd probably get a ticket. You can't park there. You can pull in the driveway. So I wonder why FedEx is allowed to park there. And, I mean, it was even across the road. He wasn't even on that side of the road. He can park, there'd be no problem with him pulling in the end of the driveway because his truck is not that heavy. Because when we had our driveway paved, we used to have oil delivery. We had him deliver, our neighbor let us, he would just pull up in his because it was real close and he could just go do it. Because his truck, my brother had informed me, was going to be too heavy for what they normally, a driveway with, you know, depth is. His truck is not that heavy. When we have mail delivered, the mail never, because all our mailboxes are down by the road, they never park there. They go up the driveway and deliver it. They don't park there. They just do, you know, stop, deliver, stop, deliver. They move real fast. So I had a question on that, but there's other things. Landscapers. They don't put in driveways of people that they're working on. They park there, and they're there for an hour or more. They park there. There was on Monroe Street. That's a busy street. I was going north. There was a delivery truck. They were delivering all kinds of stuff. They had no signs, nothing out, saying they were there. They were occupying a driving lane. I don't think that, to me personally, that's a safety issue again too. You got a lot of traffic and all of a sudden, whoops, you gotta slam on your brakes or something, see this big truck stopped in front of you, you know, trying to, that's a busy street. Certain things, businesses, I don't think they should be allowed to be doing this. I don't care what the company says. I mean, if there's no parking, there's no parking personally. Right, if it's real, okay, I can see by the schools. Handicappers. If it's not a busy time of the, you know, there's certain ones that, you know, they got their flashers on. People know this is a school. You're supposed to slow down anyway and watch, right? I can see it there. But some of this, I don't think it's becoming more than you think. I drive around different areas and I've seen a lot of this going on. So I think it's getting out of control.
Could be, I'm not sure, it's not an issue for the traffic commission though, Dave?
I don't
I'm not
know.
sure how
Well,
we
I think
relate to
I
it.
have maybe some responses for that, not neither in support or whatever. I mean, just, this is, like on a road, I have up on here, here's a roadway like a Monroe Avenue. It's a 4-lane roadway, undivided. Now, the difference between something like an East Shore Drive and this is that this is actually designated as 2 driving lanes. And it's an arterial street, well, so is East Shore, but this carries a lot of traffic. So, something like this, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone just plunked down on this roadway without any sort of temporary traffic control or anything like that for some time, that technically is a moving violation. They're occupying a travel lane and creating a traffic issue.
Impeding traffic.
Yeah, they're impeding traffic, so, in a situation like that, I think that's a citable offense.
And they could easily have pulled in the driveway and done their business.
Sure. Now, on something like every once in a while, we'll get something like, a moving truck or something like that, and they'll come to us and ask, can they do this? And we say, well, conditionally you can. What are those conditions? Well, we have what's called a street obstruction permit. Street obstruction permit allows contractors, movers, you name it, someone to occupy part of the roadway and basically block it. I mean, when there's sidewalk construction, utilities, things like that, that's what that's for. Because that work has to get done. I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how. And how do they do it? That's why you start to see orange signs and cones and barrels and all of that. That's what that whole process is. So on a roadway like this, if you're gonna be, someone's moving or obstructing that lane, and we've had some issues actually with Brad's counterpart prior to his retirement. We had worked with a couple of issues that we had on University. There was a couple of places where these semis would just plunk down and, for 15, 30 minutes or something like that, and we're just like, well, you just can't do that. So we, these are situations where sometimes you kind of have to get it at the source, like, okay, where's this delivery going? It's a store. Well, you tell these people they can't deliver here. It's either that or they're gonna have to obtain an obstruction permit from Public Works and sign it properly. Just like you'd see under roadway construction, road work ahead, right lane closed ahead, and that's really not feasible for them, so then they usually just say, well, we'll park on a side street and we'll shuttle it in. That's what I've seen like along Monroe. I know people have moved in and out of Monroe, and we would say, we'll give you a street obstruction permit, just park on the side over here, and they'll say, well, we'll get a shuttle vehicle and we'll shuttle it back and forth. I mean, so it's something that sometimes they come to you asking how to do it and do it right. Sometimes you don't have people that really abide by the law, and they just kind of do things that they want, and then we catch it. So, it's unfortunate not everyone is going to comply with the law, so, it's just a matter of if we catch them or not, and then how do we rectify the situation. But like I said, there are some locations where you'll see this occurring at certain spots, and it's going to rectify it.
Yeah, I kind of want a little clarification too, and then I just was concerned with some of these things, and I've seen, it's a lot of landscapers too, do this, a lot.
Right. The
And
biggest...
I don't think that,
The biggest distinction I want to make, especially after you brought that up, is that when you have a roadway, let's say, well, we brought 9th Street up. 9th Street has 1 lane and 1 parking lane. It doesn't operate as 2 lanes, it really
Right,
shouldn't.
right. That would be
Where something like
different.
this, it's marked as a 4-lane, it's in the books as a 4-lane, arterial, that kind of thing. That's kind of a different story, because this is so heavily traveled that it really, once someone sets down and obstructs that area, it really creates a problem. Where in another location, we get a lot lighter traffic, it's a parking lane. Well,
But
people are
it's
expecting
acceptable.
things to be
Yeah,
just
then
not
it's
moving in that
acceptable.
area,
Yeah,
so,
sure.
there's a little bit of a distinction between the two.
Sure.
Okay, good.
So, all right.
Thank you. Moving on, public hearings, that's a new item. Is there anything under that, Dave, or are we ready to adjourn?
Let me just, I'm going to. I'm just gonna put down, talk to myself. Okay, there is a adjournment, yeah, so I mean, the next, it's right, I don't have the next date on here, but it is it's the typical
Third
meeting
Monday.
time, 3rd Monday. the month, was it 21st, something like that, or
No, that's the
maybe it's the 19th.
19th, I think it would be.
That sounds right.
19th, I think, June
I
19th.
can confirm that in a second.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody so wishes, or second it, all in favor? Or adjourn?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Now, do we have to, what do we gotta do to sign off?
You just gotta, let's
Yeah, I think you
see.
get logged on to those.
Oh, leave meeting, there you go.
Right, not meeting there.
Except we'll accept it. There we go.
So next meeting.
Meeting, and then are you sure? We're sure, right, Ray, when I get to,
So then log out over here. Oh, you log out.
probably hit that.
How did you find it?
Hit the X up there, after you log out. And hit the X up in the 6 for the door.
X in the window.
That's it.